Okay. So Sam, all right.
Evening everybody. It's my first time doing tips and tricks, so sorry if these are a bit lame. I like doing anything wherever possible in 3 dimensions. It's how I like to think. You may already know this, but 3D view dimensions, you can go to Architecture, Set, select any particular plane within your 3-dimensional working view and dimension relative to that plane. Now I typically use align dimensions to measure stuff like windows. It's relatively easy to visually coordinate stuff in 3 dimensions. The reason this might be a tip is because most other things in the Annotate tab you have to be in a locked 3-dimensional view, but this is entirely rotatable once you've created your elements. It's a reasonable workflow if you've not done it. Oops. So my next video is about work plane manipulation. I'm not sure if anybody uses 3-dimensional work planes, but like I say, I like to draw in 3D, so they come in quite handy for me. If we go to Architecture, Set, specify this time a building level as the work plane, OK that, and go to the show function. Wait for me to catch up. You see that visualized. Now I don't know if you know, but the grid spacing on this is entirely malleable, so I don't like 2000. I typically like to work 1000 or 5 meters when I'm working in here. It can be used as a decent reference whenever you're sketching in 3 dimensions. So you can see it scale up to 5000 as required. You can manipulate the edges of this 3D bound work plane to assist you in modelling, and I think it's a bit clunky.
This working like our work.
Yeah. This isn't how fast I am, don't worry. This is
It's because it's a 4. You've got one of these fancy 4K computers, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry.
I got one of them.
So yeah, once we've specified and messed around with the... No, it's not going to do it, Rob. Yeah, we can move and align this work plane grid. You can rotate it relative to building elements that you've already done and make it specific to the thing that you are modelling. And the reason this is important is because then when you begin to sketch in 3 dimensions, you will automatically snap to the orientation orthogonal to that of your work plane, which, if this sped up, I would be able to show you. I'll put that online. How's that sound?
We'll put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube works.
Apologies about that. Cheers.
Cheers, sir. Just blame my computer. Everyone blames my computer. It works all the time, except when we play videos on it, and then all of a sudden it just has a little mind of its own. Right. Are you ready for this, ladies and gents? Those of you who haven't been here before don't know what's coming. The rest of you, brace yourselves.
Lifetime experience. It's all about the tune. So we try to keep the detail groups count as low as possible, but sometimes they tend to populate across multiple views. So how can you fish for that? So send the group now, go to detail, in this case, detail group, can right click, suspicious group, select all instances in your type project. If there's only one instance, or all of the instances of this group are fitting in a single view, the work set will reveal the view name. But if you select a particular detail group when there's more than one instance in multiple views, the work set doesn't tell you. But if you try to group them while they are still selected, you get a warning saying that you cannot group detail groups in different views. So use this to your benefit. Expand the warning, and then if you expand the error node, it will reveal the names of the views in which each detail group instance is. You can check the box, click the show, and if you're lucky, Revit will open up the view automatically in which that particular detail group instance is. Here's an alternative. You can export the warnings to an HTML file, which you may know how to do that, and then just open the HTML file and just copy paste the view name to the and search for the view name using. So you copy the view name, cancel, and now you right click search, and then if you paste the view name and click next, it will jump straight to the view name in which the detail group instance is. It seemed shorter when I created this one. Okay, thank you for watching. Is there a new song?
You've changed the music.
No. Oh. Have I not presented this one in the last? Maybe. Okay, I haven't practiced this one. Okay.
If you haven't, sure, well, people remember.
Yes, okay. So, a frequently asked question in families is how can I create a negative offset? Okay, so, first pick up a reference plane. This is one way of doing it. And one is called the frame, the other reference plane is called offset control. And then you constrain both of the reference planes, like the axis of the window and the offset control reference plane with an offset control 1 parameter, and then you constrain the reference plane control with the frame reference plane, which you will then host the elements that you want to move to that reference plane. Okay, so you select the elements, edit the work plane. And then if the reference plane is not named, you cannot select it from the list. That's why it's key to name the reference plane. So as you can see, that bit of the window just snaps to the reference plane called frame. And now a bit of formulas in the parameter. So you have the offset, which is the actual parameter that you'll be typing the offset. And then you have the offset control 1 and then offset control 2. You can lock a particular offset to a number if you just type the number in the formula, so it gets grayed out. And now on the offset control 2, if you add a formula offset control 1 minus the actual offset that you want to use, the offset will work in a way so that it will just do the math between those two. So for 400 it's positive, so it's above the axis, and if you type a negative value, it will go down in the other reference plane. New song? Could it be? Yeah. Okay, thanks, next Matthew.
Right, so this one's about Navisworks Exporter, which helps your workflow between taking a Revit model into Navisworks. If it hasn't already installed the add-in into Revit, when you've installed Navisworks, then you can go onto the Autodesk website and just download it. It's completely free, and install it. So here are some tips and best practices for doing that. So the first thing you want to do is create a 3D view specifically for this purpose. So in here you can turn off any geometry that you don't want to export into the Navisworks file. So you can hide individual elements, you can switch off whole categories. Or a good tip here is to turn off all the annotation because you won't need it in your Navisworks file. So when you've got your geometry ready in that view, you launch the add-in tool. And here you can give a name and a location for your Navisworks file, and this will create a Navisworks cache file, an NWC file. And you also here, using this method, get to access the settings. So here you can sort of configure the way it's going to be exported into that Navisworks file. So if you ever import a file into Navisworks and it doesn't quite, there's something wrong in there, perhaps there's an object not quite showing or there's some rooms not showing, sometimes this is the way to fix that problem. And when you've got settings, that work for you, you can export it to an XML file and share it with others. So you can import a Revit model directly into Navisworks, but all Navisworks will do is create that cache file on the fly, and you'll get all the geometry, and you won't get any control over the settings that it uses. So using this method by Revit is I would suggest, the best way. So once you have your cache file and you bring it into Navisworks, we can have a look at the switchback tool. So there's your Revit model in Navisworks. You can bring multiple Revit models in, and you can set up your clash detection, and you can select elements. For instance, maybe two elements that are clashing, and use the switchback feature to find those in Revit. Now, if you get this error message, most people get that the first time they use it. The reason is because you have to have the Revit model open at the same time, and you have to activate the tool like this in Revit. Now, when you click on that, nothing will happen, but when you go back to Navisworks, this time it will work. So with your element selected, you click on switchback, it will jump back to Revit, and it will find you a view with those elements in, and usually it's a rubbish view. So the next tip is, don't click on anything, leave your object selected, go to a view that you know and trust, and use the section box tool. So those elements are still selected, so you click on that section box, and you've isolated the elements. So you can imagine when you're doing clash detection and you find two elements, you use this tool, very quickly take it back into Revit so you can manage the clash. Okay.
Is that you done? Cool.
Right, how do I start it?
Just press the space bar.
This is a quick tip for doing stripy schedules like Excel does. And what you essentially have to do is create a dummy parameter that turns on the shading in the schedule. So you just create, this is for a door schedule, so it's an instance parameter. You call it whatever you like. Is it frozen?
No.
It's going a bit slow.
Going on the slow side.
That's okay. It means,
Note to self, tell everybody not to record them in 4K.
means I don't have to talk as quick.
Sorry, we're ahead of schedule, so this is getting us back onto it.
So I've made it a yes/no parameter. Essentially what this does is make your schedules more easy to read, like as if you'd done them in Excel with the alternating bands of shade. So once you've created the parameter, applied it to all the elements, then you need to go into the formatting for each column. And once you're in there, you can use conditional formatting. Yeah, unfortunately you have to do this for each column. So you go on conditional formatting, set the field to shaded instance, or whatever you call it, equal to yes. Pick a nice colour. So I've just done the first one there. You get a little tick box that turns it on, and then you go and do all the others. I think I've skipped ahead a little bit. in Blue Peter fashion. So you've got a tick box for each row for turning on the shading now. That's quite a long schedule. So for shorter ones you can do it manually, but I've done a little dynamo script for speeding it up if you've got one that's like, 5 A1 sheets or whatever. So if you've got one there, going at that speed it'd take quite a while, but
This is fast, but nice then.
So that's a very simple dynamo script. It just grabs all the doors, sorts them by the door number, and then splits it into 2 lists, odd ones in the list and even ones in the list, and turns on the parameter for the odd ones or whatever, and vice versa. If anyone wants that dynamo graph, I can send it to them or put it in on the website or whatever.
With that, you have to ensure that your filtering is exactly the same.
Yes, you do. If you've got I put sort of roller shutters, I give them a different number and filter them out of my door list.
Yeah.
So you have to replicate the filtering in Dynamo.
I imagine it would be really difficult to do that for a multi-category schedule.
For a what?
Multi-category schedule.
I haven't tried that yet.
It'd be nice if Revit just did this, really.
But that's that.
Yeah. Thanks.
I don't know.
Really
Does everyone
appreciate
understand that?
Thanks very much. Sorry. I apologise for my computer. It's disobedient, frankly. Right. So this is Max. This is just a quick one from me. We're nearly at there now. This is something which I must admit, until recently, I didn't know was part of Revit. I might embarrass myself a little bit here, but does everybody know this? If you do sort by type in a schedule and take off itemize every instance, if you've got something like length in the schedule, obviously what happens is if there's more than one instance of that particular object, then of course it doesn't display the lengths anymore. Does everyone know that there's this option here, show conditional formatting on sheets? And you can actually turn it to either calculate totals, which I'm sure we all probably did know was there, but there's a couple of other options in there that's appeared in the last few versions of Revit. One is show maximum, which shows the maximum length of the longest instance of that wall, or you can do show minimum, or you can also do show minimum and maximum. So you can show the difference in the maximum and the minimum length of any particular type of object within Revit, just using that option. So it's a little feature. I must admit, it was one that sort of passed me by. I don't know about you guys, but it passed me by. It got added a couple of versions ago. It's typical Autodesk. They didn't actually put it in the documentation anywhere. It just appeared. Color fill by view. Again, just a little setting that is sometimes a little bit hidden away. If I want to do a colour schedule by department, for example, you can see that the department legend at the moment shows this vent department in there, but you can see that there's no yellow colour on that colour scheme, so that doesn't appear in there. So obviously that vent department is elsewhere in the model somewhere. There is an option in the type properties of view of colour legend, where you can switch it from by view to all, or all to by view. And if you do by view, it now shows those department legends by whatever's in the view rather than what's in the entire model. And because you can duplicate the types here, you can actually create multiple versions of your colour schemes that you can switch in between if you want to. So you can have a by view and an all as well. So you can have one where it shows department all, and you can also have one which is by view as well if you want to. So it's just a little option really there, just to allow you to switch and chop between the different settings. And there's another one here as well. Recently I've been spending a lot of time with people who are having I'm going to have to be careful how I say this. Performance issues. And
Why'd you look at me when you said
I don't know, to be honest, Kevin. It was that conversation the other night we had. So just a quick one. We've had this issue for a little while with Revit, where if you've got particularly large, complicated models with lots of elements in them, unless you've got some super machine with a graphics card, which costs in the hundreds, unfortunately, the performance of the zooming in and out could become very, very sluggish. There's a new option that's been added in the graphics. It's been there for a couple of versions now, but I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to it. And it allows us to turn off, or it allows us to change the setting for redraw when you're navigating. So it's a bit like the point cloud tool that the point cloud engine that's in Revit. As you zoom in and out, you'll see things disappear and reappear as it takes stuff out and puts them back in again during the zoom in and out process. It's really, really efficient. So where we've got really large models, I've been working with somebody who's got stadiums, for example, and they were zooming in and out, and it was taking an absolute, it was like the videos earlier on, it was taking an absolute age to sort of figure out what it wanted to do. Turn this option on, you'll find the performance of Revit goes up quite significantly. Okay, but by default it's switched off. So just be aware that option is in there. Okay.
I thought it was turned on by default.
Well, the ones I've seen it was off, so maybe you're right. But it's worth checking, I suppose is the point really, just to check it's on or off really, to make sure you can see if you can get that performance up a little bit more. Just a little side, it's not a tip actually as well, but one thing that I've seen, I'm trying to tell people so they don't fall into the same trap, embedding links into links, i.e. I've seen people with Revit models, increasingly as we're getting more and more complicated Revit models, people are relying on links to compartmentalize their information, separate it down and so forth. If you start to bring in lots of links into Revit, and if you bring links into those links, i.e. you have a second layer of links, be prepared for the performance of Revit to crash horribly. Again, I've got one person who at the moment with a 500 megabyte model, it's taking 40 minutes to open. There's a few nods in the room going, yeah, I got that. That is usually down to linking, unfortunately. Revit files are bad, DWG files are worse. Just be careful and with the amount of linking that you do within Revit.